You cross a doorway with a mission. Your foot hits the other side, and the mission is gone. It's not madness, it's your memory system hitting a save point, and within the next 10 minutes you'll learn why your brain does this and how to make it work for you. You stand in the new room with your mouth half open. The word sits somewhere between your throat and your eyebrows. You glance at the ceiling, then at your hands, as if the answer were a physical object you could pick up off the floor. Then you give up and turn around, and the answer hits you the moment you recross the threshold. You are not losing your mind. You are losing an event, and events can be reopened. This moment has a name. Psychologists call it the doorway effect, and you live it several times a day without ever spotting the pattern. In one controlled test, a team led by Gabriel Radvansky at Notre Dame had people navigate a series of rooms on a screen. The task was simple: pick up an object, carry it to a table in the next room, set it down. Sometimes the route required crossing a doorway. Sometimes it passed through an open gap of the exact same width, no door frame at all. When a doorway was involved, memory for the object was measurably worse. Not for the room, not for the task. For the object itself, the thing currently in hand. A shape that anyone could walk straight through made people forget what they were doing. That is the signature of the effect, and it has been reproduced in real buildings, with real objects, many times. Why would a simple door frame have this power? The answer begins with the way your brain handles time. You do not experience your life as a continuous stream, even though it feels that way. Your brain chops experience into episodes, something like scenes in a film. The process is called event segmentation, and it never stops. Cognitive scientist Jeffrey Sachs has shown that people agree, within about a second, on where one event ends and another begins. The segmentation is automatic. It happens before you can decide to do it. A door frame is one of the loudest markers of a boundary. It tells your hippocampus, close the current file, open a new one. The file it closes is not everything you have ever lived. It is the event, and the event holds your intention. So what exactly gets shelved when the file closes? Not your name, not the fact that you own a kitchen. What gets shelved is the goal state, the specific intention your working memory was holding up like a sign. Working memory is tiny. It manages roughly 4 chunks of information at once, and every chunk costs energy to keep lit. Your brain knows that a new room will demand fresh attention, new objects, new risks, new choices. It unloads the previous scene to free the buffer. That is why you can enter a room with total confidence and stand there empty, while the intention dissolves in your hands. The save point preserved the whole scene you just left. It simply did not preserve why you left it. And here is the strange part. The more trivial the mission, the cleaner the wipe. The effect outruns physical doors. Researchers have reproduced the forgetting in virtual rooms, in real buildings, and with boundaries that serve no practical purpose. In one version of the experiment, the doorway was an arch in the middle of a corridor. It blocked nothing. It contained no door, no hinge, no wall to pass through. People walked through it easily. And after they did, they forgot more than a control group that walked the identical distance on the same path with no arch at all. The brain reacted to the shape of a threshold, not to the physics of a door. That detail matters because it tells you the trigger is conceptual. Your mind reads a room as a container, an event as a packet, and a boundary as the seam between packets. The seam alone is enough to drop a stitch. Yet the effect is not automatic. You beat it several times a day, usually without noticing. If you rehearse your mission, saying the word scissors, scissors, scissors under your breath, the inner repetition keeps the goal hot, and the door cannot wash it away. The reason is simple. Active maintenance overrides the cleanup. The effect is strongest when your mind is quiet and the task is light. That is why the embarrassing version of this moment always strikes trivial errands. You never forget that you are going to a meeting. You forget that you were heading to the linen closet for scissors because the errand was small enough to fit entirely in the background. There is a second pattern worth knowing. Older adults experience a stronger doorway effect than younger adults, which suggests the buffer becomes harder to protect as the system ages. The reset does not weaken. The defense does. Why would evolution build a system that makes you stand confused in your own hallway? Because the reset is not a flaw. It is the price of the present moment. Your brain is a prediction machine. It builds a model of the current situation and uses that model to plan the next move. When the situation changes, the model has to be rebuilt. A doorway concentrates those changes: the walls, the light, the people, the possible actions. Clearing the old plan is not decoration. It is the cost of being ready for the new room. Consider what a dangerous ancestor needed. Walking into a new cave while still running the plan for the forest is a liability. One wrong prediction and you are someone else's meal. The reset reads like a pet peeve in a modern apartment, but it was once the difference between surviving the next 10 seconds. Here is where the doorway effect stops being a curiosity and becomes a tool. Think about intrusive thoughts, the loops that will not stop, the worry you have replayed for days, the argument you keep winning at 2 a.m., the sentence you should not have said, cut and repeated on a loop like a broken transfer. These thoughts survive because nothing marks them as the end of an event. They follow you from couch to kitchen to bed because your transitions are smooth. You never hit a boundary hard enough to close the loop. But your brain has a mechanism, tested and measured, that forcibly ends events. That mechanism runs on thresholds, and you can trigger it on purpose. The most direct way is the one you have already spent a lifetime doing by accident: stand up and walk through a door. The method is almost insultingly simple. When you catch yourself inside a loop, get up and walk through a real doorway. Not a glance at your phone, not a mental reset, not a promise to think about something else. A physical threshold crossed by your whole body into a room you actually enter. The boundary will do what it always does. It will close the current event and open a new one. The loop is not your deliberate goal state. It is background static, and the event boundary treats background static as part of the old scene, something to be shelved with the rest of the room you left. You are not thinking your way out of the loop. You are walking out of it, using an architectural feature of your own memory system. But there is a catch, and you should know it before you start sprinting through thresholds. The reset only works on content that is not actively rehearsed. If you walk through the doorway while still narrating the thought, still building the case, still rerunning the sentence syllable by syllable, then you are holding that content in your mouth, and you will carry it into the next room the way you would carry a glass of water. The lab evidence points the same way. Active maintenance defeats the boundary. Rehearsal is exactly what prevents the wipe. So the skill is not simply crossing the threshold. The skill is crossing the threshold after you let the thought go for 1 second. Let it drop, then walk. The doorway does the rest. This is why most natural attempts fail. People carry the loop across the boundary and assume the door broke. The door broke nothing because you never put the glass down. There is a second mechanism under the effect, and it makes the technique stronger. A new room demands resources. Your brain has to register the new layout, check for threats, identify useful objects, generate a fresh set of expectations. Building the new event model consumes working memory, the same tiny buffer that held your mission. Attention gets pulled away from inner replay and toward the new space. That is why the effect is stronger when the destination is unfamiliar. A kitchen you have seen 10,000 times triggers a smaller reset than an office you have never entered. Use that. If you are walking through a doorway to break a loop, aim for a space you do not usually occupy. The balcony at night, the stairwell, the hallway you rarely take. Novelty is the amplifier. The doorway effect belongs to a wider family of everyday memory failures, and knowing the family helps you recognize the pattern. There is the tip of the tongue state, where the word sits behind a wall you cannot break. There is the open fridge moment, where you stand in cold air and your intention evaporates, which is the doorway effect wearing a different coat. And there is the return trip, the experience of walking back through the same threshold and feeling the memory snap back into place. That last one is real, and it is the most useful. The brain indexes memories by the context in which they were formed, including the room, the light, the position of your body. Cross back into the old context, and the old goal state often comes back with it. You do not need to retrace every step. You need to cross the boundary in the other direction. Put the two together and you have two deliberate tools. The first is retrieval. When you lose a mission, do not stand in the new room squeezing the memory out of your forehead. Walk back through the threshold you just crossed. Re-enter the old event. The context will do the work that your conscious effort cannot. The second is release. When you want to drop a thought, walk forward through a new threshold. Let the thought go for 1 second, and let the context switch pull the loop out of the buffer. One direction recovers what you lost. The other frees you from what you cannot stop. Same boundary, two directions, two outcomes. That is the whole tool. It costs nothing. It runs on your own hardware, and it has been operating in the background of every room you have ever entered. The doorway effect has embarrassed you your whole life. It will keep happening, because you cannot stop event segmentation, and you should not want to. The same mechanism that empties your hands at the threshold is the mechanism that lets you leave a bad day in the office, a heated argument in the kitchen, a version of yourself that existed only in the room behind you. Every door is a reset button pressed by your own nervous system. You only now know you can choose what you leave behind. Next time the mission vanishes, stop hunting for the mission. Look for the door you just walked through. It is still there, and so is the version of you who had the answer. Then walk back, collect it, and carry it forward. Your memory was never failing you. It was cleaning up after you, one threshold at a time.